Okay, so Zayin number Aleph, 97a. We have some more statements about the description of the state of the Jewish people in the world at large in the generation that will merit Mashiach's coming. As I mentioned, this Gemara is discussed more elaborately, or some details are discussed more elaborately, at least in the end of Saita. And it's often cited. I've even seen the Rabbi talk about this Gemara, the Gemara at the end of Saita, some of which is here as well, as a description of our generation. And we'll see as it goes along. It's pretty obvious. Okay, so there's a parenthesis there. There's a parenthesis right in the middle of the page, and the parenthesis quotes a pasuk. Now, when there's a parenthesis in a text, that means that at least according to some versions, it doesn't belong there. When we're at the parentheses. So it's often the case that when there's a parenthesis, it means that the text doesn't belong there, at least according to some version. And Rashi indeed says, I'm not sure why it's here. He gives a kind of explanation, but Rashi begins by saying, why this pasuk is here. But anyway, the pasuk says like this. Asher charfu evecha Hashem, it's a pasuk in Tehillim, 89:52. Asher charfu evecha Hashem, for your enemies, O God, have disgraced you, something like that. Asher charfu ukbis Mashiach, they have disgraced the footsteps of Mashiach. That is to say, either Mashiach himself or the generation preceding Mashiach, and that's kind of what the Gemara is going to go to say, as Rashi tells us, because the Gemara is going to describe the state of disgrace, as it were, in the generation preceding Mashiach.
We're on the generation of Mashiach.
We're going to read right now. Okay, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, we learned in the Mishnah H text. Habuda Omer Huda says, Dar Shimon David Ba, I'll translate them literally, and then when I get to a place where I have a comment from the Rebbe, I'll share it, and then I think there's a comment coming later, and from there I'm kind of going to build the rest of it, but for now, just go to the literal interpretation. So Tanya B'Huda says, Darsh ben David Ba, generation that Mashiach will come, Boy, that generation Mashiach will come, Beis Havad, the house of meeting, that is to say, the study hall, the place where scholars meet, that's what Beis Vad, like you have the same terminology throughout Mishnah, like in Perek Chelek, that a person should make his home a Beis Vad, like a place of meeting for the sages. So that's this description, Beis Vad. So Beis Vad, the house of study, Yeliznus, will be transformed into a place of prostitution. Description number 1. Number 2, Va'galil, the Galilee, Yecher will be desolate, will be destroyed. Va'gavlon, a place called Gavlon, as Rashi says, I don't know what it is. Yesham will be wasted, laid waste. Va'anshe Gvul, and the people at the borders of Eretz Yisrael, or at the edge of the Sanhedrin, as Rashi says, points out, like the end of the Sanhedrin, the Sanhedric line. Yisevu Me'ir will travel from town to town. V'lo Yechanan won't find a place to live. That's description number 3, the destruction of Israel. Right? There's Beis Vad Liznus, and then the place is laid waste, and people of the borders traveling have no place to settle. The Chochmas aside from Tisrach, wisdom of scholars will be, Tisrach means like to smell, it means to be unwanted. V'yirei chet yimasu, and those who fear sin will be despised. Sound familiar? Upnei hadar k'pnei hakelev, and the face of the generation will be the face of dogs. Rashi says literally their faces will look like dogs, and then he gives another interpretation. Perhaps another interpretation is that they won't have. This is the more commonly understood interpretation: is that people will be shameless. It's like a dog doesn't have shame; goes to the bathroom whenever it wants, and does his business whenever it wants. And make a lot of noise without doing something, and maybe that's what it is also. So that's the most common understanding, that the dog have no shame. They go to the bathroom, they
bark anyway.
They mate in public, so people will have no shame in that sense. And then va'emes nahaderes, truth will be scant. This is quite a description. Shenemar, again, I'm leaving it just as it is for now. Shenemar, as the verse reads, that Tehiyah eres ne'aderes, and the truth will be scant. The Sar Mira Mishtoilol, and the one who refrains from doing bad will be mocked. Okay, so says the Gemara, Ma'vi Tehiyah eres emes ne'aderes. What does it mean that truth will be scant? Amri de Rav, so they've said in the name in the house of Rav. Malama, this tells you, Shenasis adarim adarim. Nadaris means scant, but it's an interesting word that shares a root word with Eder, which means like groups or like herds. So this teaches you, says Rav, said the students of the house of Rav, that truth will become like herds, by lechasla, and run away. I'm not sure what that means, but that's what it means. That truth or truth tellers become like herds and they run.
Take the Ari become nun nedarim.
Okay. So and then the next part, the rest of the pasuk is Ma'ay v'sar miram shtoilo. What does it mean that those who refrain from bad will be mocked? Amri devei Rav Shila. They said the people in the study house of Shila explained, Kol misha sar miram. Anybody who refrains from doing bad, mishtoilo alabrius, will be seen as an insane person by everybody else. People else look at him and say, this guy's crazy. Okay. So before I go on to the Gemara, the next Gemara, which is an interesting story, which is a kind of parenthesis, actually, in the middle of the discussion. It stops the discussion on the description of the generation of Mashiach and discusses just the idea of truth in and of itself. But before that, I wanted to say that there's a pshat that Rabbi gave in Pnei Hadar Pnei Kelev. The generation, the face of the generation looks like the face of a dog. So I mentioned that the most common way of understanding is that people will be shameless. And that simple way of reading will actually connect to when we get to Rebbe's interpretation on one of these things. It's going to connect to that as well. But this is another side pshat, if you will. It's the famous Fabrengen in the Purim Tafshin Yud Ches. Famous Fabrengen, which lasted something like 10, 12 hours or something. So long Fabrengen. 2 Maimarim, 2 discourses, hours and hours of talks. They were speaking to people something less common where they would talk to people individually. They call them out by name and tell them something. Very famous Fabrengen. Anyway, so in that Fabrengen,
1958, is it?
Purim 1958, yeah, Tafshin Yud Ches. In that Fabrengen, they was talking about, right, so there's the mitzvah to drink until you don't know the difference between Haman and Mordechai. So they were talking about obligations that come from not knowing or from negative, like from not doing. Classic example being leket and shikra, yeah, which are where the person's collecting their produce and they forget things and leave them forget either strands of wheat or bundles of wheat. They should leave it in the field. So this is something that you don't know exists. If you knew it exists, then you're not obligated anymore. So it's like a mitzvah that's in a negative knowledge. And likewise, when it comes to those who are supposed to be leaders, there's supposed to be a negative relationship to leadership. In other words, those who are leaders should be people who don't want it. There's this kind of negative relationship. So Rebbe added, and in the transcript he said, Rebbe laughed when he said this, that one way of understanding the Gemara, which says that the generation of the face of the generation that's going to lead to Mashiach is like the face of a dog, is that in the same way a dog leads its master, right, the dog walks ahead, but it doesn't go based on where it wants to go. It's constantly turning around looking to see where his master wants to go. So he's supposedly leading, but he's always looking at the people. So it doesn't have the so likewise the leaders of the generation preceding Mashiach are the kinds of leaders that don't have the strength to lead on what they think is right, but they're constantly looking at people to say, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And they're leaders that are followers. There was a kind of tongue-in-cheek interpretation, but it has, of course, a lot of truth to it as well. First of all, on a literal level, today leaders are democratically elected. They have to look at the people to see how they want to lead, just literally. But I think more broadly speaking, also, it's the fact that leaders lack the tenacity to forge a path and say, look, even if it's not popular, this is the right thing, and do it anyway. Yeah. Okay, so now the Gemara takes a break from describing the generation of Mashiach coming, to talk about truth in and of itself. So the Gemara says like this. It's a very interesting story. Amar Rava says, Meresh, starting out, Havamina, I was of the opinion, that Leka Kushta Ba'al, there is no truth in the world. Done, just doesn't exist. At least people who speak the truth only. It just doesn't exist. So Amar Yahumir Rabbanon, so there was one of my fellow colleagues, one of my fellow scholars told me, Rav Tavos Shemei, his name was Rav Tavos. But Amil and others say it wasn't Rav Tavos, it was Rav Tivyomi, it was a Tivyomi Shmei, his name was Rav Tivyomi. And that if you were to give this person, Tavos or Tivyomi, Kol Chaled Alma, all the wealth in the world, Lo Yav Mishana B'Tibodei, he would not deviate in his words from the absolute truth. No wealth can buy him. Zim Nachada, one time, Yikloi Lahu Asra, this fellow, this one who wouldn't deviate from the truth even for all the wealth in the world, he arrived at a certain town, Vakushta Shmei, and the name of the town was Kushta. Kushta means truth. Arrives at a town called Truth. V'lo yav mishana b'divrayu, and the entire town, nobody would deviate from the absolute truth.
Kushta's Aramaic?
Yeah. Kushta's Aramaic for truth. Lo yav mishana b'divrayu. And nobody in the town would change their b'divrayu. Sorry?
That Kushta is truth.
Yeah.
But Kishot means to adorn.
Yeah, Kishot is yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Like a jewelry.
Yeah, truth adorns a person. Also, Tzek Tirdof is Kushta. Yeah,
it's justice, but that's interesting. It translates Kushta.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. The Targum translates Tzedek, which we would translate as justice, into Kushta, as in truth.
Truth, yeah.
Very interesting.
It's more than justice, it has to be. Yeah.
It's much more than justice.
Exactly.
Because justice can be subjective.
Isn't it truth and justice at your gates? Somewhere from the end.
Tzedek u'mishpat shalom. We'll get to that pasuk soon, but Tzedek ve'emes. Yeah, Tzedek. What's the pasuk?
Yeah. So the truth and justice come together.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it in Perek Aleph, right? The end of Perek Aleph. Here, right there. You have a siddur right there. I think it's the end of Perek Aleph, right?
Yeah. Definitely. Three things the world.
Right. Al din, al emes.
Shalom.
But that's not. Oh, din and emes. That's right. So din and emes.
Yeah.
Similar to tzedek and emes, but din.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he went to the city which is called Kushta, which means truth. Nobody in the entire town would change their.
Emes u'mishpat shalom.
That's emes mishpat.
Emes u'mishpat
shalom. Right, truth and justice.
Yes, din, emes and shalom.
And peace. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry,
how's it translated?
How do they translate it there?
You mean what the emes?
Yeah.
Emes is the truth. Yeah.
Truth, and mishpat as in justice or as in judgment.
Judgment. Yeah,
and
judgment
peace.
And judgment of peace. Yeah, emes shalom.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting story. So the entire town, nobody would change their word. Everybody would say the absolute truth. And no one in the town would die before their time. No premature death in the city. So this Rav Tivyomi or Rav Tavos, who himself would never deviate from the truth, he found the perfect place. So what did he do? He married a woman there. It's like, this is great. Married a woman, stay here, that's it. And he had 2 children from her. Got married and had 2 children. One day, his wife was sitting in the home, and she was combing her hair or washing her hair, something like that. Washing her hair. Now, Asi Shivitza, a neighbor came, and Tarfa Adasha knocked on the door. So Savar, this fellow, after Yomi, the sage, scholar, this man of truth, he thought to himself, Lav Eirech Ara, it isn't appropriate to go tell a neighbor, oh, my wife is washing her hair. It's not appropriate. Someone knocks on the door and you say, well, my wife's in the bath. It's not a nice thing to say. So Amar La, he told the neighbor, Le Sacha, she's not here. Deviated from the absolute truth.
Yeah, he's going to pay the price.
Shechivulu Tartan Benin. His 2 sons died.
Right.
Don't know if he died right then. But they died prematurely. He died while he was still alive. So Asu Anshe Da'asra, people of that town came L'kameh before him. And they knew in their town nobody says a lie. And they know in their town no premature death.
Exactly.
So they see a premature death in a home. So Amalei, they said to him, "My, what happened? Why your children died? We allowed you to marry one of our townswomen, because we heard that you say the truth only. And that's why we've been preserving our longevity." And what happened? Amar lahu, so he told them, "Hachev ma'aseh, this is what happened." Amalei, they told him, please, sir, poik ma'asim, please leave our town. Can't stay here anymore. And don't bring your death upon our people. End story. And this comes right in the middle of a conversation about when the generation of Mashiach is coming, and because the Gemara mentioned that the truth will be scant, the Gemara makes a comment about truth. The truth is about truth that the Gemara elsewhere discusses about Avram Avinu. That Avram Avinu, I want to get this right. Over here, he said something that wasn't true. Whereas if I remember correctly, Avram Avinu just withheld some of the truth.
Yeah, Hashem withheld the truth.
Hashem, right, the other way around.
Because
Hashem withheld some of the truth from
Sarah
him.
said that how can I have a child because I'm old, my husband's old.
Right.
So Hashem just changed around and just said that only that Sarah was old.
That's right. Hashem withholds half the statement. That's correct.
Yeah, he didn't lie though.
That's right.
Here it's a lie.
But here, he deviates from the truth itself.
Yeah.
But Avram, didn't he lie about his wife when he went into Egypt?
Avram said, "She's my sister."
Sister. Well, it's a niece. That's what they get around it. It wasn't a complete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His zivug, his sister.
But here it was a complete lie.
It's an interesting thing because the Gemara. I have to look up. We should look up the Gemara really.
But
The Gemara there has a discussion about
the Darkei Shalom is allowed.
about when a person is allowed to withhold some of the truth or say the truth in a misleading way to preserve the peace. And the Gemara learns it from Avraham Avinu, from the story of Hashem and Avraham Avinu.
But here his motivation was
Was
pure.
correct.
It was pure. I mean,
But instead of, he didn't say she's occupied.
Yeah, she was occupied. She's
No,
busy.
it's he could say something that isn't contrary to truth, but doesn't say the whole truth.
Right.
But he chose to say something that wasn't true.
He was there in the house.
Right. But the statement in the Gemara before is Lemishana Dibarayu, they didn't change their words. Sounds like they said everything. In other words, even it sounds like it would be very difficult to live in this town where everybody's saying all the truth all the time and never the way the Gemara describes the truth here, they wouldn't deviate from their words. Anyway, it's just interesting to think about. And somehow I'd like to see an interpretation that connects this to the statement made before, that what it means that when it says truth is scant, it means that truth becomes like, or truth tellers, or the truth itself becomes like herds that leave. What does this mean, become like herds that leave? Where are they going? Why do they be compared to herds? Like, what does that mean? I'd like to see something which connects that, and then somehow the story helps with understanding that. That's what I'd like to see. But there's the story. It's quite something.
So do we draw the lesson here that it's better to say something that may be inappropriate than to lie?
I don't know. The Gemara seems to be saying it was a bad thing that he lied. Right? So that was what he should have said. Maybe is like she's not available.
Right.
She's otherwise occupied. He doesn't have, which is a truth, but not everything. He's not saying exactly what she's doing at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? My grandfather used to say, "Nish v'bal mahata piskaf mineden." Not because you have a mouth, you have to talk. You have a mouth if you have to say, like, this is what I don't have to say. Right? But on the other hand, one shouldn't deviate from their words. I think I'm more describing it here. It's quite a story. There's a lot to think about here. But that's the Maisa. This is the story.
It's
Okay.
interesting how Rashi puts it. Lo meshana v'dibur l'shaker.
They didn't change their words to lie,
Right,
but
so-
change their words to withhold the truth, maybe yes.
Exactly. That's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
that's interesting.
The Diuk and Rashi, you can see that's not necessarily a steer on the case of
That's
that.
interesting.
That's right.
So,
He said he lied. He said
Rashi, when I was pointing out the way the Gemara describes that the fact that they never lied as lemishana debora, which means they didn't deviate in their words. Like if you read the Gemara literally, it would sound like they said the entire truth and all the truth, nothing but the truth, kind of thing. They didn't change their words. But Rashi says they didn't change their words to lie. As if to say they may have changed their words to withhold some of the truth. Rashi adds that they wouldn't change their words, and then says to lie, as in. Anyway, it's a lot to think about here.
so much for a white lie. Not good.
Not good.
Not even a white lie is good.
Yeah. Well, a white lie means that a person withholds some of the truth. Is that a white lie, or a white lie means that
It's kind of what he did. It's kind of like
it's an innocuous lie?
It's a non-harmful lie. It's
Right.
like I don't want to upset the person. I don't want to this or upset the situation. So I'll say something that's not quite the truth.
Right.
But it's not so like no one's going to be no one gets hurt.
No one's gonna be hurt.
No one gets hurt. No, there's no impact
Right.
on anyone. It's kind of like okay.
Yeah, but it seemed on the simple level that he had an option. He could have just said she's not available.
Yeah.
At any rate. Okay, so now let's get back to the Gemara description of Mashiach's time. And here we have the Rebbe's comment, which I will share with you. And then I think the rest of the comments can be seen in that context. Tanya, we learned in the Bride, so getting back to the discussion of what Mashiach the generation of Mashiach looks like. Tanya ben Narahi Omer, Rabbi Naharai said, Dorish ben David ba, the generation in which Mashiach will come, by in it, Na'arim, the youth, Yalbinu, will embarrass, literally whiten, shame. Pnei Zakanim, the face of the elders. Vizakanim, and the elders, Yamdu Lefnei Na'arim, will stand up for the youth, as an honor them. Ubas Kama Ba'ima, a daughter will stand up to her mother, the Kala B'chamasa, and a daughter-in-law will stand up to her mother-in-law, as in without any respect, embarrassing them. Upnei Ader K'pnei Kelev, the face of the generation will be like the face of a dog, we mentioned before. Ve'ein ben misbayish ma'aviv, and child will embarrass their father. So this is a description of a generation where the youth do not find the counsel of the elders as useful at all. We know it's best. We're much smarter. You're old. You don't know what you're talking about. Let me do what I want. And you stand for me, not the other way around. We relegate all honor of parents to one day a year. And we make a holiday out of it. So this is the description of a generation.
Even then.
It only lasts for breakfast and bed, and then get on with your day. Drive me to school. Take me here. Take me there.
There's a story. There's this company that you can send someone on Mother's Day or Father's Day. You can send a shliach on your behalf.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah. To like have lunch with your parent and entertain them, and I'm here on behalf of your son. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's a true thing.
I'm sure it's very lucrative business.
They're overbooked.
Okay. So this is quite the description of our generation. Now the Rabbi, as I mentioned this way at the beginning when we began this whole discussion, that the Rabbi talked about how within the negative there's a blessing without changing the actual negative, but being able to use it in a positive sense. And here's the Rabbi's comment. The Rabbi's comment does come on this specifically. The youth will embarrass the elders. And a number of occasions were talked about it, but one specifically is in the earlier years, whenever was pushing for the Shlichus movement, the movement of Chassidim picking up, moving to a town where there's no Jewish infrastructure, but plenty of Jews, and reaching out and going forward. And that was addressing the concern of some of the elder generation, the older Chassidim, who saying, look, we never did this. This like, we're Chabad Chassidim, my grandparents were Chabad Chassidim, my great-grandparents were Chabad Chassidim, we didn't do this. My kids can be good, nice Chassidim. They stay right here. And that's never quoted this pasuk in the positive. We're living in a generation where the youth enjoy forging their own path. That's what they like to do. That's our generation. And they could be, you could be told that, look, you're a generation that Mashiach is coming despite you, and you're not deserving of it because you're not respecting hallowed out history and hallowed out what did Rabbi say? You use it in a positive sense. That's true. The next generation is not looking at the old generation for guidance. So give them a new path that they can charter that's better than the ones before. So it's true, previous generations didn't go out and go to cities and turn them over and be Makadav and bring closer, but the young generation will do that. And then the elders will stand for their youth. They'll be in awe of the youngsters and their Mesiras Nefesh and their self-sacrifice, not in a negative sense, but in a positive sense. Or, if you leave it alone, it might end up being in the negative sense. In other words, this is the nature of the generation, where the youth like to go and forge their own path. Now, how are you going to use that? In a good sense or in a negative sense? And they will talk about this later with, the culture of revolution in the 60s and the 70s, that it can also be used in a positive sense. You know, when you tell a young person today, forget the way the world was. You have the opportunity to make the world better, to change it, to make it good, to make it better. He's right on board because it's fantastic. It's changing the past. Or if you leave it alone, they'll change the world for the worse. So this very curse can be used in a positive sense. And I have to get all the details exactly. My father ran out if you can ask him, but I remember hearing this a long time ago. I have to double check all the details, but when my grandparents got married, my father's parents, my father's mother comes from a Chabad family that goes back generations. My father's father comes from a modern Ger Warsaw, pre-war Warsaw family. So when they got married, it wasn't a guarantee that my grandmother was going to wear a sheitel necessarily, or even cover her hair at all. Maybe a tichel, but a sheitel was certainly not necessarily on the cards for that kind of culture, the post-war Australian culture. And Deborah was very much pushing, sent letters to her father, to my great-grandfather, that she should wear a sheitel. And even though her mother didn't, even though her mother was married to a Chabadnik and she herself was a Chabad family, went back generations.
You didn't cover her at all? She wore a hat or?
She wore tichel or a hat, but not a sheitel necessarily. Generally, depends where in Europe, or pre-war Europe, not necessarily were all the women on board with the
I know.
with the extreme piety that some of the men had. There was a bit of a before the war there was a slow separation between the men's piety and the women's
more cultural, more European culture.
Yeah, this the husbands would sit and learn or fabring, and women would go to the theaters.
Cultural.
It was almost across the board all over Russia. Some places worse than others, but almost across the board. One of the big things actually Rebbe did is in the Sheikh Chabad, before the feminist movement. In the early 60s, Rebbe began the Sheikh Chabad, turning the women should be part of Hasidic life. And you can see the results today of shluchas that are not second to what their husbands do in shluchas. They're partners and sometimes do even more. Anyway, so one of the things that Rebbe told my great-grandfather was that even though your wife didn't wear a sheitel, it's already accepted in America, telling him in Australia, that children are more formed than their parents. So it's okay if your wife doesn't wear a sheitel and your daughter does. It's fine. And that's what happened. My grandmother put on a sheitel and it was a big thing. Even though her husband's clean-shaven, she was wearing a sheitel. And it kind of set the standard, that it's okay for a modern girl married to a wealthy guy to wear sheitel. It's okay. That was kind of like breaking the ice there. But it's all rooted in this Gemara, which can either be a negative or positive. And I think if we go back to the Gemara before, maybe we'll discuss more about this on Monday, but I think the things mentioned before about the house of the sages becoming prostitution and scholarship is scant, and those who fear sin are despised, I think all that can connect to this, and we'll talk more about that, God willing, on Monday. A wonderful Shabbos, everybody.
Jew.
Yeah.